What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be trying to do the best that we can to remove this scratch. That's not coming out. This is kind of interesting. The gentleman hit like a PVC pipe in a parking lot, and you could catch it with your fingernail. I mean, as light as possible. So I'm hoping that some of it is transfer. It's deep, but not too deep. So we're going to try to diminish this as much as possible, try to clean it up so it's not as contrasting to the eye. I don't know how good it is going to come out. The only thing we could do is try. And the subject that we're going to cover today is how sometimes wet sanding is actually safer than just buffing. And that might sound surprising to some people, but I'll explain shortly. If I try to remove the scratch with just a machine, that's going to introduce a lot of heat. So I'm going to have to stay over this for a very long time to get any kind of results. And the probability of burning the paint is very high. It is actually safer to wet sand the scratch. Wet sanding doesn't introduce heat, just friction. Now, can you still mess up the paint by wet sanding? Yes. However, I'm not going to go nuts. I'm going to first start off with 1500 grit and then 3000 grit, and I could buff those out in 2 seconds, if that makes sense. Trying to buff this out will take forever. However, the 1500 marks and the 3000 marks, I could get those out like that. Actually, regular scratches and swirl marks are harder to get out than 15 and 3000. So I'm going to try my best to get this out. I've been pre-soaking my paper. I don't think it's going to come out. The only thing we could hope is to get rid of some of the white or gray. That makes it look much worse. So hopefully we could just improve. This is 1500 grit. I would not try to buff out this 1500 grit, even though I probably can. Well, I know I can. I would be much more comfortable just going behind it with 3000 grit. Okay, I'm gonna inspect what I did so far now, because right now I really don't know what I did. So I'm gonna see if I did anything. So this time I'll know if I have to go more, go less. I did measure the paint. It's coming around 6 mils, so we do have something to work with. I feel we did improve it over here. Over there it's getting a little bit deeper. So let me bring you guys in. You could see it's so hard to see. You could see the sanding scratches, and you could see it right in the middle. It did improve drastically at the start right there. So let's start sanding a little bit more. So when I tell some people, sometimes wet sanding is safer, they think, wow, really? And yes, Absolutely. Right now, you know how long it would take me to get, the results that I just got? Just try to just buff that? It would be ridiculous. The panel would get so hot and I'm outside. The probability of burning the paint is so high. And then I would have to wait for the panel to cool down. It would just take forever. So I'm gonna keep going until I start to get uncomfortable. You never want to make yourself uncomfortable. I've been doing this for a while, and I don't want to risk the integrity of the paint. I want to try to get it as best as I possibly can. And over there I improved it. Over here it's pretty deep. It's pretty deep. So we're gonna go at it again just so I could properly sand it. Maybe go in a different direction. Okay, I'm gonna go one more time, and I know that. And how you kind of know when you wet sand, it really helps to see how deep the scratch is, because when it's glossy and it's hard to see from the wet sanding marks, you could actually see how shallow the valley is. So it gives you the best idea of how deep it is or how deep it isn't. So I'm just gonna blend my area, finish this with 3000, buff it out with my Rupes Mini, and that's all I could do. Because you have to understand something. If I had 20 mils of clear coat, I could probably take this out. It's not that I don't know how to take it out. I do know how to take it out. It's just there's not enough to work with. So hopefully it comes out better after we buff it. It might, in my past experience, sometimes the scratch looks a lot worse with the wet sanding marks. Hopefully we cleanse the scratch so it's not as contrasting to the eye. Yeah, there it is. Over here, we removed a pretty good chunk of it. Over here, it starts to get worse. So, I'm actually gonna bring out my paint depth gauge, and I'm gonna go get my 3000 grit. So I'm doing some paint readings. Over here, we was around 158, 160 mils. The part where we sanded, we're at 153 mils. So we really took only a few mils of paint off. I mean microns, not mils. Microns. Don't pay attention to me. You never want to take off a few mils of paint. That's bad. Microns. Microns. We're going to do one more gentle pass, and then we're going to go behind it with the 3. I'm just going to try to blend the bottom area over here. I feel I didn't do as good of a job. So I measured what I did, and I'm comfortable continuing because I didn't take off a ton of paint, which, you know, we already knew that already, but I really got to try to get me some Jason Kilmer blocks. Those blocks are sweet. I'm using a backing sponge pad to get in these areas. Those Kilmer backing pads are crazy. Okay. Again, I feel it's not going to get any better. It probably can get better, but again, jeopardizing the paint going more, you know, it does have some paint on it, but this is 3000 grit. This is going to make my buffing process a lot easier. So the couple minutes it takes to wet sand with 3000, why not? So that means I have to do less passes, introduce less heat, it refines it. So the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages of just sanding again, if that makes sense. Okay, let's see what we did. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to go behind it with the 3000. Now, the 3000 is removing a tiny amount of paint. I'm not hoping to remove more of the scratch with this. I'm just trying to refine the 1500 marks, if that makes sense. Because if you didn't get it out with the 1500 grit or the 1200 grit, you're not going to get it out with the 3000 grit. Kind of like compound and polish. If you didn't get out with the compound, you're not going to get it out with the polish. So am I removing some paint right now? Yes. But I'm doing this more to refine the surface so the scratches are easier to buff out. So that should be good after this. I'm going to go plug into some electric right now. We're going to buff it out and see what kind of results we got. Okay, we got a Meguiar's 3-inch cutting pad and some D300. Probably put too much there. We're going to prime the pad. Why I'm using D300 is I buy it by the gallon, and I use this for my production work. You know, I don't use fast correcting cream for every little thing because it's more expensive. However, I do love fast correcting cream. However, D300 is always in my arsenal. I always use it here and there. It's a really versatile product. It even works well outside, which we are right now. So I'm working on speed 4. Judging, I knew that the scratch didn't come out as good as I was hoping. However, we did remove some of the white, which was one of my goals. If you remember earlier, I said we could remove some of the white so it's not as contrasting. So that was accomplished. You know, only a certain amount of people would be able to see it. Of course, the owner, because he knows it's there, it's going to drive him nuts. But the point is, even though I fully didn't remove the scratch, which I kind of knew that I wasn't going to be able to remove all of it, is if I was just going to try to compound this out, it would have been more dangerous. So I achieved these results much more safer than just trying to buff it out. So even though I didn't remove the scratch, I'm still proud of what I did, because I did make it look better. I diminished it as safe as possible, and we removed the white so it's not as visible. So I'm gonna bring you guys in. I still have to polish it some more, but you guys get the idea. I'm not done compounding it. It's gonna be hard to see on camera. I don't know. I can't even see it on the screen. Hopefully you guys can. Right where my camera is. See that? If you remember, it was much more white and much more visible. So we did improve it. I knew that we wasn't going to be able to remove all of it. My goal was just to improve it. Is it as good as I wanted to? No, but like I said earlier, I just wanted to remove the white. So I hope a lot of you guys that are getting newer to detailing, but you know, if you're new to detailing, you're probably not wet sanding, but you know, if you're comfortable with machine polishing and you want to start getting to wet sanding and people are calling you to remove scratches, you know, don't think that wet sanding is more dangerous. You know, practice techniques, look online, understand what you're doing, make sure you have a paint depth gauge. I'll give you a quick story. Guy came in my shop, wanted top-notch coating, everything. Money's not a problem. Yeah, do it. I measured his paint. It was a 2013 S550 Mercedes, beautiful car. Only had like 7,000 miles. It was hammered. The dealer really destroyed this car's paint, and I measured it, and it had like the biggest reading I got was like 3.1 mils of paint. Some readings were as low as 2.6, 2.4, and I told him perfection is not even, you know, possible. So it just goes to show you that even though it was the S550, if I didn't have the paint depth gauge, I wouldn't have known how much paint was on it. So you can't just look at a car and say, oh wow, this clear coat looks great. You know, you never really know how much is there. Or so be safe, get a paint depth gauge, and again, I hope you guys learned something. So if you have any more questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. Am I embarrassed that I didn't remove this? Absolutely not, because if there was more paint, I probably could diminish it, but it's very hard to say if it went through the clear coat or it's at the base coat, because it's not at the primer, but it's pretty deep. I would say it is through the clear coat. It's just literally almost at the point of going to the base coat, so it's almost there. So for me to remove all of this, I would have to remove 95% of the clear coat, and that makes no sense. So I know how to remove this scratch. I can remove it. However, there's going to be nothing left behind for this car to last. This car has to last this gentleman for years. So just a little lesson. So if you think it's kind of stupid that I showed this video and I really didn't remove all of it, this is, you know, to get, you know, some newer people out of some jams. So don't just try to buff out a scratch. Get some fine grit sandpaper. You know, if you know what you're doing, removing swirls and scratches, taking out 3000 grit and 2500 grit is easier than taking out a regular swirls and scratches. So again, if you have any questions, comments, leave them in the comment section below. For 3000 grit, I recommend getting the Trizact 3M. Fantastic sandpaper. So I'm going to make a video next. We're going to be polishing the rest of the BMW, so make sure you watch that one. I'll put a link in the description below. Thanks for watching.